Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft the full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.
Cracker Barrel sales continue to tumble. Sweetgreen is taking the value route, and we've got some trend predictions for 2026. Welcome to the final episode of Extra Serving of 2025. I am Nation's Restaurant News Editor-in-Chief Sam Oches, and I am joined by my colleague, Executive Editor Alicia Kelso. Alicia, happy end of 2025. Do you
Crazy
feel
to
good
even
about
think
this?
about. Yes, I do. I feel great
Yeah.
about this. I'm looking forward to having a little bit of a break. No offense to you, of course.
None
Spending
taken.
time with family, all that fun stuff that this time of year brings.
Same. I have a solid 2 weeks that I am taking off, and it is going to be much needed. And we said before, look, we're driven by the news that this industry makes. This is what we do. We love it. We all love all of you. We love following what you're doing. But it is nice. I will not complain that this time of year, this industry takes a bit of a break. Things slow down. Everybody's focused on running their restaurants because the restaurants themselves are still pretty busy, obviously, and that affords us a bit of an ability to take a breath, take some time off, and then jump back into it in January. We especially need that, Alicia, because we've both had snow days lately with our children, and we both got a fair amount of snow this weekend. And I'm going to lose my brain if my kids are inside any longer. So let's see. Maybe things will warm up. The snow will go away, and I will be given time to actually have my own thoughts and not just children's screams. Anyway, let's jump into the news, Alicia. First off, Cracker Barrel reported their most recent quarter over this past week, and not pretty. Sales and traffic both down fairly significantly. Now, Alicia, you pointed out not as bad as expected, but still not great. Tell us more about what we saw from Cracker Barrel's sales results.
So edge of seat stuff here, Sam. This is edge of seat stuff. This is
Let's
the
hear it.
first report that Cracker Barrel had since the logo controversy heard around the world.
What are you talking about? What controversy?
The one that was so absurd, and in all honesty, it's probably one of the biggest stories of the restaurant industry this year.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And just over the logo, the rebrands, the remodel, all of the stuff that happened in August, based on CEO Julie Massino's simple goal of making the brand more appealing to younger consumers. It's a noble goal, and it needs to be done.
Yeah.
But the Cracker Barrel loyalists did not like the way it was done. So we saw, like I said, this was the first earnings report since that controversy where the decision for the new logo and the remodel were reversed very quickly. And everybody had opinions on social media, including 80% of whom were bots. Our president got involved, just a whole mess of, a whole lot of absurdity. Revenue down 5.7, same store sales were down 4.7. Traffic was down 7%. To give you an idea of this controversy, traffic was down 1% in August and then 9% in September and October. 1% to negative 1% to negative 9%. I don't know if I read that right, but negative 1% in August to negative 9% in the ensuing months of the quarter.
Yeah.
Negative 7% on the quarter was better than the negative 8% predicted. Let's take the win, Sam.
Yeah. We'll take it.
And just a couple, she basically, it was a concession. It was basically like, we know that we have a lot of work to do to restore brand reputation. And that work is underway. So I think that the priority now is food and operations and guest experience.
Yeah.
It probably should have been before. I think one thing that surprised me was, Cracker Barrel tried to streamline their back of house operations to make that experience better, and it didn't work. So in addition to having these issues with the branding controversy and the court of public opinion, some of the things that they were doing behind the scenes weren't working.
Right.
And they made some menu updates too, and they're going back on that. They're bringing back Uncle Herschel's breakfast because, we've learned that Uncle Herschel shouldn't go anywhere, according to his fans. And like I said, I like to spin things a little positive here. I think Cracker Barrel will recover. I think it's going to take a significant amount of time. Their Google ratings are up. They've got some momentum from a loyalty program that they can sort of hang their hat on. We've talked about how much market valuation that this company has lost, and it's just a bad story. That it's going to take some time, but they were really doing well before all this controversy. So the plan that was in place seemed to be working pretty well. Unfortunately, another piece of the story from earnings that I think is one of the biggest angles of this earnings call is this has resulted in corporate layoffs. So that's a bummer. And again, they are predicting that's going to save about $20 to $25 million. They're in cost cutting mode there, which is never great. I want to sort of back up though and understand Cracker Barrel's share price has down a little over 50% this year, right? It's pretty ugly. But I also think it's important to understand that it's not alone.
Mm-hmm.
So their share price is down significantly this year with this logo controversy that no other brand had to navigate. So I think what sucks for Cracker Barrel is its share price was down in an environment that was particularly challenging. If you think of, for example, Wendy's is down 53%. Sweetgreen is down over 150%. These are things that were happening without this big 80% driven by bot controversy. So, like I said, Cracker Barrel has a lot of work to do to recover, but I think it's going to do just that. And I think, ideally it will be sooner than later because we want everybody in the industry to succeed. But this is up against a really challenging backdrop that's impacting other brands for other reasons.
Yeah.
And that's just compounding the issue.
It's a good caveat that, what they're going through is a host of things. For starters, there's some self-inflicted errors, right? There's the tough marketplace in which, to your point, everybody is struggling. So had this whole experience happened in 2019, I think it'd be a little bit of a different story. And they have this very, very unique situation where they have an activist investor in Sardar Biglari, who, from what we can tell, has been behind a lot of this. Has been fueling the narrative in his attempt to get Julie and others out of the company. And I mean, that is a trifecta of things that are working against them. And you have to feel some sympathy for them, because as we have talked about on this show, listen, we believe, we can have our own opinions about the rebrand and the logo. But I think at the end of the day, the moves Cracker Barrel made were not out of the ordinary, and they were not bad decisions. They were the typical things that restaurants all have to do to upgrade, to move their brands forward. You have to upgrade your systems. You have to redesign your restaurant. You have to redo your logo every so often, because otherwise you will become relevant. We've spent a lot of time at Nation's Restaurant News over the past 5 years going through a rebrand and, updating our content according to what you, the audience, wants from us, because if we didn't, we'd be irrelevant. Unfortunately for Cracker Barrel, of course, you've got the marketplace issues and the activist investor issues, but they also, the self-inflicted part of this was they moved too fast. I think they just did too much too soon. And the big lesson I think that we need to all take away from this situation, and probably we'll be reading about in books in the future, because I think this is something where, this is worthy of business classes teaching this, You have to understand who's in charge of your brand, who owns your brand, who's in charge of the narrative, who's in charge of the relationship, who's in charge of the identity. And for Cracker Barrel, they have this interesting situation where they've been around for generations and they're really rooted into a specific community in America. And that community owned the brand. And that's what the executives at Cracker Barrel, who've only been there for X number of years, in some cases, a lot of years, but not nearly as long as this brand has been around and been loved by the communities that it belongs to, they were trying to make changes to it that the community, the fans of Cracker Barrel did not agree with. And it was too much too soon. And so what everybody needs to take away is, what does your brand mean to your core consumer? Who's your loyal consumer? Who's your regular? What's their relationship to your brand? What do they want out of it? What's the narrative you're telling? And then how do you sort of gently move that along, not sort of force it down the road, right? So altogether, I sympathize with the executives at Cracker Barrel. I've told the story already, but I met with Julie Messino about a week before everything happened in one of the redesigned restaurants in Orlando. And I think she's a fantastic leader, and I think she was making all the right moves. I thought the redesigned restaurant was really, really wonderful, and it's just kind of a shame that, Cracker Barrel's loyal fans may never get to see it because of all of this. But the fact of the matter is there might have been a little bit more sort of TLC that the community of Cracker Barrel fans needed in moving them down that road. And we're going to take that away from us. I agree with you, Alicia. If it's not the biggest story of 2025, I think it's certainly top 3, just in terms of what we'll take with us into the coming years. And to your point, like if a president is tweeting about it, it's a big mainstream story. Like everybody was talking about Cracker Barrel. So we'll see what's in store for 2026. Okay, let's move on to another brand you've already mentioned that is not doing so hot. That's Sweetgreen. Sweetgreen, I'm going to venture a guess, Alicia, that Sweetgreen's core customer couldn't be more different than Cracker Barrel's core customer. They're very different bases of consumers. Fair. And yet, to be fair, going back to sort of the nature of the market and all this, like everybody facing the same challenges, Sweetgreen facing the same challenges, which is how do we get people to keep coming into our restaurants to increase their traffic? And Sweetgreen is turning to an age-old solution, and that is value. Alicia, tell us more about Sweetgreen's value play.
About time. Sweetgreen had probably the ugliest quarter of the lot in Q3. I mean, they were down 9.5% same store sales. They were down almost 12% in traffic.
Woof.
Ugly.
Yikes.
Their Q4 guidance was down double digits because of this. And so just ugly. What a bummer, because what a great concept on paper. And I think the biggest takeaway from that report was understanding the executives conceding they need to do a better job on creating entry prices. There's a huge narrative around Sweetgreen, and it has been manifesting for well over a year now that the $18 salad is not feasible, especially in this environment, especially in an intensifying value environment where everybody's chasing that $5 to $10 price point. So them launching a $10 bowl, I think is part of that. It's a nice tidy price point, and the goal again is to, bolster its reputation for having an entry level price. That's the kicker here. And to be fair to Sweetgreen, this issue has impacted the entire fast casual category all year. I would argue as well that one of the biggest stories from my vantage point where I'm sitting of the year is the extreme softening of the entire fast casual category.
Yeah.
And, I never thought we would be having conversations about negative traffic at Chipotle where they are turning to BOGO deals in earnest. And so I think fast casual, Consumer Edge had a trend report that came out, I think about 2 weeks ago, noting that fast casual is losing wallet share, especially to casual dining, because of a perceived value gap. It's the same issue that has impacted fast food for over a year now. And now it's trickling into fast casual. Now, fast casual, including and especially Sweetgreen, over indexes on urban markets and younger consumers, which has, again, its own unique challenges. Younger consumers are getting their what's kicked.
Mm-hmm.
They're more unemployed than their older peers, having a harder time finding jobs. Their wage gap is bigger. They are very vulnerable for having their entry level jobs be replaced by AI. They're having to pay back student loans after 2-3 years of that being on hold. They can't afford houses. Just a stunning amount of hits
Yeah.
coming to Gen Z. And then urban markets are struggling too. They continue to struggle. Work from home, I think we're still at about 50%. You and I have this conversation from our respective basements. And Sweetgreen over indexes in those urban office center
Right.
areas. So lots of things I get, like kind of like Cracker Barrel, lots of things working against it. But finding that $10 price point, I think, was a good first step.
Yeah.
For this brand in particular. Sweetgreen has a big affordability issue, and I think this is very critical for them.
Yeah, this is an overgeneralization here, perhaps, Alicia, but the first Sweetgreen opened in Columbus, I guess now at least a year or two ago, and it opened in the Short North, which is close, right outside downtown Columbus. It's about a 20-minute drive for me. I'm never going to go. I don't want to drive down there. I don't want to find parking. I'm in the suburbs, and I am probably the core demographic of Sweetgreen, right? Like the millennial parent is right in their wheelhouse, because when Sweetgreen came out, it was really designed to appeal to that young millennial who was just entering the workforce. It was cool. It was hip. It was appealing to those, the healthy diet. It was in the urban centers where millennials were flocking to cities. And it had all of that going for it. And then when you have the millennial now parent moving to the suburb, again, generalizing, but I think there's a lot of the sort of generalizing you can do in terms of these trends. That millennial parent moves to the suburbs, and Sweetgreen is, opening some in the suburbs, but it's not quite its wheelhouse. They developed a drive-through prototype. I think they're first opened in Chicago, but they're not rolling that out with a lot of significance. And it's just like they couldn't really age alongside the millennials. And so the play seemed to be like, let's just go down to Gen Z. And you just laid out all of the issues with Gen Z for why Sweetgreen can't meet the moment, And then on top of that, I think if you compare Sweetgreen and Cracker Barrel, it's such an interesting study in, again, branding and brand affinity, which is to say Cracker Barrel has this foundation, which is I grew up with it. I went with my grandparents. It is a part of my life. I love it. Sweetgreen doesn't really have that luxury. It's about 18 years old as a concept, and around 18, 19 years. Again, I think you had those millennials who maybe loved it for that lunch when they were starting out in their careers, but they move on. And again, generalizing, but like if I'm putting myself into this, Chick-fil-A drive-through all the way, my friends, because I got 3 children to feed, and it really is a price point. It is a price issue. So I think going back to something you said, Alicia, I think Sweetgreen gets through this. Nothing. It's very rare in this industry that you have a death knell that is just like they couldn't overcome it. They're dead. They're gone. No more. They will get over this. They will get through it. But I think they've got a pretty long road to hoe here, so to speak, which is, they've got to figure out how that value can resonate. And I think it's going to take more than a simple $10 bowl. They got to figure out how to get really, closer, more accessibility to that core demographic that wants to eat Sweetgreen. And they've got to settle out the menu. I mean, from the ripple fries they put out earlier this year and then took back, and they've got, the infinite kitchen robotic thing that seems like they sort of commit whole hog to it before pulling back. There's a lot of sort of maybe should we kind of, I don't know. Sweetgreen's got to really, I think, figure out for itself, what is this concept? Who is it trying to appeal to? And then be laser focused on giving that to them. I don't have the answers here. It strikes me that it's because it's still a young brand, it cannot fall back on that. Well, of course, we're Cracker Barrel. We're going to be around forever because we have been around forever. Cracker Barrel can fall back on that. Sweetgreen doesn't really have that luxury. So I will be interested to see what happens. But Alicia, to your point, there's a bigger narrative here around fast casual that I think 2026 is going to be kind of a telling year, a pretty significant year for the fast casual category and the direction it goes in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think fast casual has to be a bigger part of the value conversation because the value conversation is not going away. I thought it would by now.
Yeah.
But then we saw McDonald's come out this week and formal or enhance their, franchisee standards to include and make consistent their value proposition. That's
Right.
the biggest bellwether in the industry. And so the value conversation is going to continue. It's why we're seeing Chipotle pick up their marketing budget up to 3%, which is a 90 basis point increase over last year to focus on value. And Sweetgreen has to be a part of this conversation. I also want to really quickly add, if you think about the breakfast day part and that recovery, which is really random, I understand as it pertains to this conversation, but it's the easiest day part to replicate at home.
Yeah.
So more consumers are eating at home right now, and breakfast has taken a big hit accordingly. Salads, I think, are the same.
Agreed.
And so, instead of paying $20 for a salad, they're very easy to replicate at home for half that cost and, lasting a bit longer, more than one meal. And I think that could be a big issue here too.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, Alicia, this is the last episode of 2025 for Extra Serving, and we've already kind of touched on what's gone on this year, what's going to happen next year. Let's formally jump into it. Let's get into it. What are our trim predictions for next year? And I want to say too, Yum Brands actually kind of random because you don't see a lot of restaurant companies doing this, but Yum Brands put out their own kind of trend assessment, sort of state of things, which we see a lot of this time of year from lots of consultants and various organizations. But Yum Brands put one out there. So I want to get into 2026 and sort of our assessment of how things are going, what we expect of 2026. Let's start with that Yum report, which you covered, Alicia.
Yeah, it is random, but they also bought Collider Lab 10 years ago, and that's a market research firm. So they're leveraging that to
We
come
got to
out
do something with it, right?
100%. Here's the non-shocking part about it that
Okay.
I think anybody could predict for 2026, including me. We've reported on this extensively. It's going to be a big year for beverages and sauces.
What?
I
No
know.
way.
I
Next, you're
feel
going to
like
tell
this
me
is
that chicken's going to be popular.
deeper nuance here with the Yum report that I think is worthy of mentioning. There's a reason for this. And I really like this reason because things are so nuts right now. Consumers are finding comfort in having control, these sort of micro control mechanisms that they can have in building their own meals in, putting whatever sauce they want, and you can build whatever beverage you want. I think there's 70,000 combinations, like a seven brew, for example.
Yeah.
This is giving them control in a world where they otherwise don't feel like they have much control, and that speaks to me. The news this weekend was terrible, for example.
Yeah.
The Yum report also said that eating is more of a vibe than it is about the food. I've heard this corroborated in several report pieces. If I'm an operator, I don't know what that means. So I've got to figure out right quick what that means, because the food has to always, be the focus area. Now, if I may, away from the report, because that was really focused on menu, 2026, I think, is going to continue to be very pressured. I think it'll be a little bit more stable than this year has been. But I don't think we're going to be out of any deep, dark woods, at least in the first half. If we look at inflation, it remains high. Consumer sentiment remains low. The wage gap versus inflation gap remains big enough for consumers to balk at spending money. We don't have data from the federal government for the past couple months, so it's a little murky, but we know beef prices continue to go up. Like I mentioned earlier, we know McDonald's is codifying value as part of their franchisee standards as the bellwether. That means everybody's going to have to follow, including fast casual and casual dining.
Yeah.
I think because this environment will remain pressure, unfortunately, we're going to see more mass closures and more bankruptcies. On the positive side, in addition to having a little bit more stability than this year, and I think there's something to be said about knowing that this year will be a little bit slow but stable. Last year we were all gung-ho that it was going to be an awesome year, and that's just kind of a bummer. But there's a lot of turnarounds underway, and I think we'll start to see the fruits of that labor
Yeah.
Manifest in 2026. I think M&A will continue to pick up, especially in that sort of sexy middle market. I think we're going to see a Pizza Hut acquisition. My hunch is that will be a PE firm or maybe even a C store.
That'll be big.
I think we're going to see an IPO.
Uh-huh.
Maybe Inspire Brands is my bet. I'm not a betting person, by the way. I don't like gambling.
Good, because you got some good opinions.
And then on the innovation side is going to continue to be a lot of fun. We saw the Grinch meal, we saw the SpongeBob meal just do wonders for traffic at those two brands. But we're going to see so much in beverage, so much in chicken and sauces. It's going to be fun on the innovation side.
Yeah, it might get a little overwhelming, perhaps. Maybe we'll jump a shark at some point. Yeah, we'll jump a shark. We might be getting close to that, but you all know where to find all of that information, nrn.com. I share a lot of your, I think, pessimism, Alicia. I've learned my lesson the last few years not to say, next year's going to be better, because...
Don't call me pessimistic. Call me pragmatic, please.
Pragmatic. My apologies. I could never call you a pessimist. You're the least pessimistic person I know. But I'm with you in that. I think 2026 is going to be tough. I really do. We speak a lot about sort of this idea of bifurcation, right? That concept came up in the thick of COVID, right? It came up where you had the bifurcation of like extreme accessibility, convenience, and sort of extreme sort of experience. That bifurcation has continued, and that shows you in, I think you mentioned vibes, Alicia. We talk often about experience, kind of synonymous, these two. This idea that like you'll have a bifurcation of customers wanting to go dine in, have an experience, be immersed in the luxury of dining out, even if it's a little bit more expensive. And that's why casual dining, I think, will continue to succeed in 2026. And then the other side, that bifurcation, is that extreme value, extreme convenience, people really trying to find that value for themselves and their family. I agree with you that there's going to be a lot of closures. We are saturated as an industry. The good news is that after those closures, more dollars to go around, and those who make it past these closures will start to see business pick back up, especially as inflation maybe sometime comes down and the economy gets a little bit, macro factors get a little bit more, a little bit softer, or a little bit easier to deal with. But we're going to go through probably a while, perhaps all 2026, where you're going to not like the news. You're going to watch as there are going to be closures. You yourself, your business might be feeling that pressure too. I think we're past the knee-jerk reaction phase. I think 2025 and 24, there was a lot of knee-jerk reaction going on. I think we are at a point now where there's realization setting in of this worked and this didn't work. And so this is the path we have to go forward. A lot of echoing what you said, Alicia, but I think we're on the same page about, 2026 is going to be tough. Restaurant companies are going to make the decisions that have to be made. They're going to understand what the customers really want, and they're going to be more strategic about giving it to them rather than reactive to it. And it should build for a better, hopefully, 27 and beyond. But my recommendation to everybody out there is be resilient, be frugal, have an eye on the future, buckle in. We'll get through it together. We always get through it, guys. We talk about the pendulum. We always get through it. You'll get through it. We'll be fine. But it's going to be tough. Let's end on a positive note. Alicia, it is the holidays. Therefore, what is your favorite Christmas movie?
Harry Met Sally. And I'm not saying that because Rob. I'm not saying that because of Rob Reiner.
Sure.
Unquestionably, When Harry Met Sally. Always has been. I watch it about 12,000 times on break.
So that's like a Love Actually and a Die Hard, which is like, this isn't really a Christmas movie, but it's like a Christmas movie kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the New Year's ending, it's just so romantic and.
Fair enough. Yeah. I'm starting to embrace Die Hard more, partly nudged along by our colleague, Jonathan Mays. He's obsessed with that as his favorite Christmas movie. And I'm like, oh, come on. And then I started watching. I'm like, yeah, this is a great Christmas movie. But as an elder millennial, I got to go Muppets Christmas Carol. I watched it over the weekend with my kids, and it's as great as it ever was. That's all we have for this episode and this year. A Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to all of you. You know where to find us in the meantime. Email us or find us on LinkedIn. Alicia, talk to you next year.
Cheers.
We are excited to talk to you today about what is our most significant menu innovation in years. So we have recently launched what we're calling our menu of the future, really contemporizing what's already a large menu at McAlister's. We have over 150 items, and this menu launch brings forward bold new flavors, a new protein platform in pork, and it stretches from our starters, so our appetizer course, through our main entrees, and that includes sandwiches as well as our giant spuds. And then we always have new rotating desserts. So it is absolutely our boldest and largest menu innovation in years.
Well, pork, that is quite a big deal, bringing in a new protein, and the timing couldn't be better because beef prices are not so crazy. So that seems smart. Uh, why don't you two talk me through the whole process of getting this launch to happen? Because it's a big deal, all of this stuff.
It's a huge deal and comes with a full menu board redesign as well. So this is years in the making and very much rooted in items that we've tested over those years and have new flavor profiles. So particular to pork, Chef, why don't you tell them about some of the really exciting flavors that we have introduced in pork on the menu?
Thanks.
Yes, go ahead, Chef.
Hi. We started by going into this project looking at where we can start leveraging some familiar favorites, but also putting our own unique twist on it. So one of the items that we're looking at is the honey barbecue pork line here, which is featured in a sandwich. We also are doing a giant spud that's filled with mac and cheese, pulled pork, barbecue sauce, bacon, it's covered in cheese. That is called the Smokehouse Spud. So we really wanted to kind of feature this protein in a lot of different platforms, but also in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and it is amazing. We are attracting folks across the demographic profile. So that Smokehouse Spud, you have macaroni and cheese on a spud along with pork, and just amazing from the social media and Gen Z aspect. And then we also have pulled back the Cuban. It was a fan favorite. We had guests asking us to bring that back to the menu, and it has absolutely been selling like hotcakes. And so you'll see how we're pulling very different flavor profiles across with one additional protein in pork.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the Cuban before, but you brought it back, and it looks like you're putting your pulled pork on top of the Cuban, according to the menu description.
Yes.
Is that right?
Some years ago that we used to have the Cuban here, and then by popular request, it was brought back when we were able to bring the protein in, and it was a really easy play for us to go right back into a guest favorite.
And you have nachos too, right?
We do.
Pulled pork nachos?
Yes, we did a honey barbecue pulled pork nacho that is tortilla chips, red hell cheese sauce. It's got tomatoes, onions, cheddar jack cheese, and honey barbecue pulled pork on it. It's really delicious.
And that's such a great way. You know, the heart of our brand is, we like to say, nourishing connection. So we are a purpose-driven brand that is rooted in bringing people together. There's so much research out there about, you know, really an epidemic of loneliness and people looking for connection. And that's why it's important to us as chefs ideating. And we thought, what do we do with the pork? Not only are you on trend with a sweet and spicy flavor and bringing that into nachos, but it's important that we continue to build out that starters category, because you can sit at our community table, bring your friends, bring your family together, or bring it home in catering. And we're all about nourishing those connections. And that flows through not only in our service, but in our food as well.
Well, and I would think also starters are a good way to boost average checks.
That they are. And, you know, Chef, tell them a little bit about the brookie and brownie bites, which is the other end of our dessert course. And to your point, boosting check is really important, and we're thinking about new ways to do it. So talk a little bit about the bites.
Our brookies and brownies are pretty legendary. They're both super delicious, and we took something that we already had in-house here, and we decided to just kind of cut it a new way, for lack of a better term, and put it in one of our cups here. It's currently being offered with a couple pieces of each in a cup here. It's great. Pop it in your mouth, toss it in the backseat to your kids if you need to, and it's really growing. It's really growing on something that's already a very, very popular item.
And a brookie is like a brownie and cookie, like stacked on top of each other, right?
Yes, it is.
You know, for people who are not as familiar with internal McAlister's Deli.
That's right. You know what? That's another tenet of our brand. If you don't want to make a choice, you don't have to. We have choose two for your entrees. You can get two of your favorite. Why not combine a brownie and a brookie? And then, like Chef said, put it in a portable cup and you can take it with you, right? So we're trying to look for all those different purchase occasions and ways to build attachment and really deepen relationships with our guests.
Makes sense. Speaking of attachment and check boosting, have you guys been doing much with beverage? I mean, you have legendary tea, but like, has anything been going on in your tea segment or your beverage segment in general?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, very on trend with bold beverages. And in fact, we just came off of one for Halloween that we coined as Witch's Brew several years ago. There's more Witch's Brew now, but I will say we were one of the first. Tell them about that flavor profile.
We looked at that one. It is just an awesome, bright, vibrant color that's in our traditional lemonade here, and it's caramel apple flavored. So it's got Granny Smith apple and a caramel syrup that we put together, and it's super, super bright. It's delicious.
And then always looking for a way to take the next beverage. We just had National Pickle Day, and so you could add a pickle onto our beverages, and such excitement for that as well. So Chef innovates flavor from an overall platform perspective, and then we're also looking for those fun ways to add something in from a flash LTO standpoint with bold beverages as well.
And if you've never tried putting a dill pickle into lemonade, it's actually super delicious.
What is the crunch in the chicken sandwich?
Barbecue potato chips.
See, wasn't it good that I asked? Because that's interesting. Yeah. If you just say crunch, whatever, but barbecue potato chips, that's fun. How did you think that up, Brock?
Honestly, we have equity currently with our jalapeno turkey crunch, which is turkey, mayo, bacon on a jalapeno roll, and we put jalapeno kettle chips onto the sandwich already. So we already had such success within that category of putting potato chips on sandwich. So when we did this one, it was kind of like, how can we bring that barbecue flavor profile even more intensely into the mix, and then also adding texture to it was just a really great win.
And I'm guessing your customers like it.
Yeah.
Oh, we have such a fan. Look, listen, you're not supposed to pick a favorite child, but my favorite sandwich is a jalapeno turkey crunch. And so adding that crunch and the potato chip flavor is amazing. And Chef's just doing a great job. I will tell you, sneak peek forward to something else we have in test right now. We are testing a Creole chicken sandwich with crunch, and tell them what that crunch is.
That one is a crispy jalapeno chip, like a fried jalapeno, if you will. And that's served on... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, just like a battered and fried jalapeno.
Yeah,
chip,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So that whole sandwich here is going to be a jalapeno roll. It's a Creole pepper marinated chicken. It has bacon, cheese, avocado, and it's served on jalapeno roll.
So it sounds like you guys are really leaning into texture, which is smart.
Texture, flavor, really bold flavor innovation. The core of our menu and the core of our brand promise is nourishing connections and then bringing what we call a little something extra. And in our culinary world, a little something extra is what Chef was just talking you through. How do we make a twist that makes it unique? To your point, is it a little bit of texture? Is it sweet and spicy coming together? Is it our own unique proprietary honey mustard that we have on our club, right? And then in service, that little something extra comes through, that all these delicious things we're talking about are delivered tableside to you. When you dine with us, it's really a fast casual plus experience. We like to say we don't sit in one defined segment. We're in our own segment because you have full tableside service. We deliver beverage, meal, bus your table, and the team members come out and spend a moment genuinely interacting with you. And that's very planful and intentional in our brand as well, to bring that little something extra of human connection.
So when you're introducing new stuff at this time when customers are crunched for time and money and, emotional space, and operationally labor is difficult and it's expensive, have you had to take steps to manage operations so that the franchisees don't, get angry at you or lose business or, fail?
Absolutely. And so you bring up guests and then operations, right? And so we'll take both of those. From the guest perspective, it's a large part of the reason why we revamped the menu boards. And again, founded in eye tracking and adding visuals. So we're able to use pictures to tell that story. We also have menu categories. So when you shop digitally in our app and website, we're bringing you through. Are you looking for, a big and bold sandwich flavor? Are you looking for a salad or a giant spud? So we have those cues that make it very easy. And guests also tell us that they love the variety. It's a core pillar of our brand. We have to make it easy for them to find what they like, but they love it because there's never a veto vote. You can bring all your friends and family, and unlike going to some cuisine types where everyone has to like that flavor profile, no veto vote. And in fact, you can take yourself 7 days a week and have something different every time. And so variety is great. Operationally, there's a lot of synchronization in the kitchen. And then talk about how you consider that in item prep.
No, it's a great point here, because we always as a team here are approaching this from the mindset of operations here. What we do here has to translate perfectly to the guests every single time here. So when we're approaching it, we work very, very closely with our franchisee partners to making sure that when we're testing, we're at least meeting any concerns that they're having here. We're constantly tweaking items here as we're going through the testing process. There's always kind of an post-mortem here where we're making sure that we're going through everything and no detail is left unturned. And we always are doing our best to make sure that team members are kind of front and center as the ones who are kind of executing all these products here. And really driving that, when you're going into McAlister's, you're getting the best possible product. Yes, we're currently testing a platform of salads and grains, and one of those flavor profiles is the Spicy Creole, which is Spicy Creole marinated chicken. It has those jalapeno chips that we were talking about before. It's got a brown rice and quinoa blend served over mixed greens. And we're serving it with a Creole pepper dressing.
So grains, is that new for you guys, or have you done that before?
It is, and it's something that we have in test now. So this is a little peek behind the curtains here. And really, this is about continuing to modernize the flavors within our strong heritage in salads, but also having grains that can be added and complement those flavors. Again, a different option to continue to attract guests and provide that variety.
It's also something that we carry through into catering, as well as we're also looking at how these platforms translate to off-premise guests. So those flavor profiles are also available at your office or at your home.